October 23, 1942. The Western Desert, Egypt. The air crackles with a tension almost as palpable as the desert dust itself. For weeks, the Allied Eighth Army has gathered, a coiled spring ready to unleash its fury. Tonight, at precisely 9:40 p.m., the silence shatters. 900 Allied guns unleash a deafening symphony of fire, raining down over 50,000 shells onto Axis positions. This is the opening salvo of the Second Battle of El Alamein, a desperate gamble to break Field Marshal Rommel's grip on North Africa. Amidst this inferno, Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg, a man scarred by a dozen battles, leads his New Zealanders into the teeth of the enemy's defenses. They are tasked with penetrating a labyrinth of mines and dug-in strongpoints, a mission fraught with peril. Will this unprecedented barrage pave the way for victory? Or will the desert once again consume the hopes of the Allied command? Bernard Cyril Freyberg, a name synonymous with audacious courage, stands at the helm of the 2nd New Zealand Division. Born in England in 1889, he emigrated to New Zealand as a young child, where his formidable physical prowess, particularly as a swimmer, began to emerge. His military career is legendary, a testament to a life lived on the very edge of conflict. During the First World War, he earned the Victoria Cross, the highest award for gallantry, for his splendid personal gallantry in leading his battalion through intense enemy fire at the Somme. Winston Churchill, recognizing Freyberg's uncanny ability to survive the most perilous situations, would famously dub him the salamander of the British Empire, a mythical creature capable of passing through fire unharmed. Indeed, Freyberg had been wounded 9 times in the Great War alone. Despite this heroic past, and a distinguished interwar career, a heart condition forced his retirement from the British Army in 1937, classifying him as medically unfit for active service. Yet, with the outbreak of the Second World War, Freyberg's determination to serve was unwavering. He successfully appealed for his medical grading to be restored, offering his services to the New Zealand government. In November 1939, he was appointed commander of the 2nd New Zealand Expeditionary Force and its formidable fighting arm, the 2nd New Zealand Division. This appointment, however, came with its own set of challenges. Freyberg, a British officer on loan to New Zealand, operated under a unique directive. He was a servant of the New Zealand government, retaining a right of veto over the division's deployment. This dual loyalty, while ensuring his division would fight as a cohesive unit, often led to friction with his British superiors. He had faced criticism for his command during the ill-fated Battle of Crete in 1941, and his division had endured devastating losses earlier in the North African campaign. At Ruwezat Ridge in July 1942, a lack of armored support after a successful night attack resulted in the loss of approximately 1,405 New Zealanders in just 3 days. These experiences forged a commander who was both aggressive in spirit and deeply casualty conscious, a man who understood the immense human cost of every advance. Now, at El Alamein, the stakes are higher than ever. The entire North African campaign, the fate of the Suez Canal, and the Middle East oilfields hang in the balance. The Allied Eighth Army, under the newly appointed Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery, faces an adversary that has proven relentlessly effective: Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's Panzer Army Africa. For months, Rommel's forces have threatened Egypt, halting just 60 kilometers from Alexandria at the El Alamein line. The terrain itself is a formidable obstacle, a narrow 40-mile corridor of desert bounded by the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the impassable Qattara Depression to the south. This unforgiving landscape negates the wide flanking maneuvers that characterized earlier desert warfare, forcing a head-on, attritional confrontation. Montgomery's plan, codenamed Operation Lightfoot, is audacious. It calls for a massive infantry assault to breach the Axis minefields and defensive lines, creating corridors through which Allied armor can then exploit. But the Axis defenses are not merely natural. Rommel, despite being on sick leave in Germany when the battle commenced, had ensured his positions were heavily fortified. Thousands of mines, both anti-personnel and anti-tank, lie buried beneath the sand, forming a deadly, invisible barrier. Anti-tank guns, including formidable 88mm cannons, are dug in to cover every approach, creating a killing zone for any advancing vehicles. Infantry strongpoints, manned by seasoned German and Italian troops, are meticulously prepared to repel any attack. Skepticism ripples through the ranks. The memory of previous failed offensives, where infantry gains were nullified by a lack of timely armored support, weighs heavily. No one believed it would be easy. They were all wrong about how hard it would be. The desert had claimed countless lives, swallowed countless vehicles, and broken countless spirits. The Axis forces, though outnumbered, are masters of defensive warfare, leveraging every dune and every wadi. The Eighth Army, comprising approximately 195,000 men, 1,029 tanks, and 892 to 908 artillery guns, faces an Axis force of around 116,000 men, 547 tanks, and 552 artillery pieces. While the numerical superiority is clear, the defensive advantage, combined with the sheer depth of the Axis positions, presents a monumental challenge. The crucial supply lines for Rommel's forces, stretching across the Mediterranean, are constantly under attack by Allied naval and air power, leading to chronic shortages of fuel and other vital materials. Montgomery, armed with invaluable ultra-intelligence, is fully aware of Rommel's desperate supply situation, giving him a critical advantage. However, this knowledge does not diminish the immediate tactical problem: how to blast through the layers of Rommel's well-prepared defenses without incurring catastrophic losses. The previous battles at Rouezat Ridge and El Alamein in July, where the New Zealanders, after successful night assaults, were left exposed and shattered by German counter-attacks due to absent armored support, serve as stark warnings. Freyberg, acutely aware of these past failures, must now lead his division into a similar, if grander, offensive, hoping that this time, the breakthrough will be sustained. The weight of expectation, the lives of his men, and the strategic future of the war in North Africa rest on his shoulders. The clock ticks towards 9:40 p.m. on October 23, 1942. A nervous energy permeates the Allied lines. Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg stands with his officers, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of tactical maps, their ears straining for the signal. The plan for the 2nd New Zealand Division is clear. Part of 30th Corps, they are at the forefront of the main infantry assault, tasked with carving a path through the northern sector of the Axis defenses. Their objectives are deep, requiring them to push through multiple layers of minefields and strongpoints, creating a lane for the British armored units that are supposed to follow. At precisely the appointed minute, the desert explodes. The concentrated fire of nearly 900 Allied guns unleashes a barrage of unprecedented scale, a rolling thunder that shakes the very earth. Shells scream overhead, hammering enemy positions, tearing through wire, and detonating mines. The sky above El Alamein becomes a canvas of fiery explosions and tracer rounds. This is the softening up that Montgomery has meticulously planned, a deluge of steel designed to stun and disorganize the Axis defenders. 20 minutes later, at 10 p.m., the infantry advances. Thousands of men from the 2nd New Zealand Division, alongside Australian, South African, and British units, rise from their trenches. They move forward in the eerie glow of the shellfire, following a meticulously coordinated creeping barrage, a wall of explosions moving ahead of them. The New Zealanders, seasoned veterans of the desert, are acutely aware of the dangers. Each step could be their last, a landmine hidden just beneath the surface, a machine gun nest waiting to open fire. Freyberg, known for his personal bravery and his desire to be close to the action, is not far from the front. His presence, often felt by his troops, inspires a grim determination. The New Zealanders push through the initial layers of resistance. The barrage continues its relentless march, providing a temporary shield, but as they advance, enemy fire begins to erupt. Small arms crackle, and the menacing thud of mortar fire joins the symphony of destruction. Flares arc into the night, illuminating fleeting glimpses of the chaotic battlefield. The first line of Axis defenses is met with fierce resistance. German and Italian soldiers, though battered by the artillery, emerge from their dugouts, engaging the advancing infantry. Hand-to-hand fighting breaks out in the craters and trenches. The New Zealanders, with their characteristic tenacity, fight to clear the strongpoints. They overcome wire entanglements and navigate gaps in the minefields, often under intense small arms fire. Their training and experience in night assaults, honed through bitter lessons like WWII Ridge, prove invaluable. By the early hours of October 24, the 2nd New Zealand Division reports significant progress. They have seized most of their initial objectives, penetrating several kilometers into the Axis lines. The minefields, though deadly, have been navigated, and key enemy positions have been neutralized. The infantry has done its part, creating the vital lanes for the armored forces. This is the break-in that Montgomery envisioned, a crucial first step in cracking Rommel's formidable defensive shell. However, as dawn approaches, a familiar and frustrating problem emerges. The carefully planned follow-up by the Allied armored units falters. Battlefield congestion, poor coordination between infantry and tanks, and cautious leadership from some armored commanders prevent the swift exploitation of the infantry's hard-won gains. The lanes, carved out at such a cost, remain largely unexploited by the heavy armor designed to smash through the remaining Axis resistance. Freyberg and his men, having achieved their objectives, find themselves exposed, holding ground deep within enemy territory without the armored fist they desperately need. The ghosts of WWII Ridge begin to stir. Rommel, who has rushed back to the front from Germany, now surveys the damage. His initial assessment is grim. The Allied assault is powerful, and his forward defenses have been severely battered. Yet, the stalling of the Allied armor buys him precious time. He immediately begins to redeploy his remaining tanks and anti-tank guns, repositioning them to plug the gaps created by the infantry. His engineers work feverishly to lay new minefields and strengthen existing ones, creating new layers of defense to frustrate the Allied advance. Days of brutal, attritional fighting follow the initial breakthrough. The battle devolves into a grueling slugfest, a dogfight, as Montgomery would later describe it. The infantry, including Freyberg's New Zealanders, are locked in fierce engagements, repelling Axis counterattacks and slowly, painstakingly, widening their gains. The battlefield is a chaotic mosaic of minefields, anti-tank ditches, and fortified positions, where every meter of ground is contested with extreme violence. The casualties mount on both sides. Freyberg, ever the pragmatist, understands the gravity of the situation. While his division has performed admirably, the larger strategic objective, a decisive armored breakthrough, remains elusive. The initial momentum has dissipated. Montgomery, too, recognizes the need for a new impetus. He knows he has to force the issue, to deliver a knockout blow. The Eighth Army cannot afford to get bogged down in a prolonged battle of attrition, despite their numerical superiority. Rommel's forces, though depleted, are still capable of inflicting heavy damage. The commander of the Eighth Army, Lieutenant General Montgomery, decides on a bold new phase of the battle, Operation Supercharge. This second major attack, planned for November 2, will be a concentrated thrust, aimed at destroying Rommel's remaining armored forces and creating a decisive breach. Crucially, Montgomery places Lieutenant General Freyberg and the 2nd New Zealand Division at the spearhead of this renewed offensive. This decision speaks volumes about Montgomery's trust in Freyberg's tactical acumen and the fighting spirit of his New Zealanders, despite their previous heavy losses and the stalled initial attack. To give Freyberg the necessary punching power, Montgomery reinforces the 2nd New Zealand Division with 2 British infantry brigades and a British armoured brigade. Furthermore, the entire artillery of 30th Corps is placed in support, ensuring that the new offensive will be backed by an even more devastating barrage than the initial one. This is an unprecedented level of support for a divisional commander, essentially giving Freyberg the resources of a corps. It is a testament to the belief that if anyone can break through Rommel's lines, it is the Salamander and his tenacious New Zealanders. On the eve of Operation Supercharge, Freyberg addresses his reinforced command. He emphasizes the critical nature of their mission, the absolute necessity of success. He reminds them of their past triumphs, their resilience in the face of adversity. The men, weary from days of continuous fighting, draw strength from his calm resolve. They know the price of failure, and they know the prize of victory. The air hums with anticipation once more, but this time, there is a renewed sense of purpose, a belief that this push will be the one that finally breaks the back of the Afrika Korps. The plan for Supercharge is brutally simple. Hit the enemy hard, destroy his tanks, and clear the way for the Allied armor to pour through. The objective is no longer merely to break in, but to break out. The target area is further south than the initial thrust, chosen to exploit per se. Weaknesses in the Axis line. It is a calculated risk, but one that Montgomery believes is essential to avoid a costly stalemate. Freyberg, with his history of leading from the front, ensures his troops are meticulously prepared, every man understanding his role in the coming inferno. The lessons of October 23, particularly the need for seamless coordination between infantry and armor, have been absorbed and integrated into the new plan. This time, the tanks must follow, and they must follow quickly. As the final hours of October pass into the first days of November, the pressure intensifies. Rommel, though receiving some limited reinforcements, is increasingly desperate. His fuel supplies are critically low, a fact confirmed by Allied intelligence. Without fuel, his panzers, his most potent weapon, are little more than immobile targets. The strategic situation is turning, slowly but inexorably, in favor of the Allies. But the tactical problem remains. How to force the final, decisive engagement, how to crush the remaining Axis resistance before Rommel can organize a coherent withdrawal. That task, the most critical of the entire battle, now falls squarely on the shoulders of Bernard Freyberg and the 2nd New Zealand Division. The night of November 1, 1942, descends upon the El Alamein battlefield, heavy with the dust of days of battle and the scent of anticipation. Lieutenant General Freyberg stands at his command post, the maps before him etched with the lines of Axis defenses, the targets for Operation Supercharge. The air is thick with the rumble of artillery being repositioned, the low growl of tank engines, and the hushed commands of officers. At 1:05 a.m. on November 2, the desert erupts again, this time with an even greater fury. Nearly 350 Allied guns unleash a barrage of over 50,000 rounds, focusing their destructive power on the chosen sector. The earth trembles violently, and the night sky is illuminated by a continuous, blinding flash. As the barrage reaches its crescendo, the 2nd New Zealand Division, augmented by 2 British infantry brigades, begins its advance. Their objective is Kidney Ridge, a seemingly innocuous rise in the desert that holds the key to breaking Rommel's line. The infantry moves forward with a grim determination, following the creeping barrage, their bayonets fixed. They encounter immediate and ferocious resistance. German and Italian machine guns open up, spitting tracers across the darkness. Flares burst overhead, briefly freezing the scene in stark white light, revealing soldiers scrambling over broken ground, through wire, and into the minefields. The New Zealanders, leading the assault, push through the first belts of mines, their engineers desperately clearing paths under fire. They engage dug in enemy positions in close quarters combat, clearing trenches and strongpoints with grenades and rifle fire. Casualties are heavy, but the advance continues, propelled by the sheer momentum of the attack and the relentless support of the artillery. Freyberg, receiving reports from the front, urges his commanders forward, knowing that every minute is critical. The breakthrough must happen now. Following closely behind the infantry, the tanks of the British 9th Armoured Brigade rumble forward. Their mission is to exploit the lanes created by the New Zealanders, to punch through the remaining Axis anti-tank defenses and engage Rommel's panzers. But the Axis defenses, though battered, are not broken. The 15th Panzer and 90th Light Divisions, though low on fuel and ammunition, put up a desperate fight. Anti-tank guns, hidden in camouflaged positions, opened fire on the advancing British armor. The 9th Armored Brigade drives into the teeth of this renewed resistance. The minefields, though partially cleared, still claim tanks. German anti-tank guns, firing from concealed positions, pick off the British Matildas and Shermans. The battle becomes a brutal, close-range engagement between tanks and anti-tank guns, a swirling maelstrom of explosions and burning steel. The 9th Armored Brigade fights with immense courage, but they suffer devastating losses. Their sacrifice, however, is not in vain. As the sun begins to rise on November 2, the extent of the breakthrough becomes clear. The 2nd New Zealand Division, through sheer tenacity and heavy fighting, has opened a crucial gap. They have penetrated deep into the Axis rear, effectively getting behind Rommel's flank. The 9th Armored Brigade, though decimated, has succeeded in drawing and fixing a significant portion of Rommel's remaining armored reserves. The Axis line, already stretched thin, now threatens to snap. Rommel, observing the unfolding disaster, issues desperate orders for counter-attacks, but his forces are too depleted, too low on fuel, and too disorganized to mount a coherent response. The critical supply shortages, long known to Montgomery through ultra-intercepts, now become Rommel's undoing. The Second Battle of El Alamein, culminating in the decisive breakthrough led by Lieutenant General Bernard Freyberg in the 2nd New Zealand Division, marked a pivotal turning point in the Second World War. The victory on November 4, 1942, shattered Rommel's Panzerarmee Africa, forcing a headlong retreat that would not end until the Axis forces surrendered in Tunisia in May 1943. Winston Churchill, recognizing the immense significance of this triumph, famously declared, "Before Alamein we never had a victory. After Alamein we never had a defeat." The Allied morale, which had suffered through years of setbacks, soared. The threat to the Suez Canal and the vital Middle East oilfields was finally extinguished. Freyberg's leadership throughout the battle, particularly during the critical Operation Supercharge, solidified his reputation as an exceptionally competent divisional commander. His ability to plan and execute complex set-piece attacks, combined with his personal bravery and concern for his men's welfare, earned him the unwavering respect of his troops. Even Rommel himself, the Desert Fox, reportedly rated the New Zealanders as the finest troops he had ever encountered. For his leadership at El Alamein, Freyberg was immediately promoted to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. The 2nd New Zealand Division continued to play a vital role in the subsequent pursuit across North Africa, leading a series of well-executed left hooks to outflank Axis defense lines. Freyberg's insistence on his division fighting as a complete formation, rather than being fragmented, proved crucial to their effectiveness and cohesion. His legacy is not without its complexities. He faced criticism for other campaigns, but his pivotal contribution at El Alamein remains an undeniable testament to his military genius and the extraordinary courage of the New Zealand soldiers under his command. Their sacrifice and determination, forged in the crucible of the desert, opened the door to Allied victory in North Africa and fundamentally altered the course of the Second World War. If this story moved you, subscribe. New forgotten stories every week. Which moment surprised you most? Comment below.